Hi Leanne, this is the feedback of your mock exam that you did just before Christmas. So if we're looking at question 1, you've got all 4 questions right, so that's a good start with 4 marks in the bag. Well done. So if we move on to question 2, which asks you to write a summary of the differences between Eddie and Henry. I like the way you've planned this out with your little grid that we've done in class. And this has helped you to give several good reasons for differences between them, starting with the way that they live. Eddie living in a loving family home, Henry miles away from home with strict rules. Eddie getting lots of support and having a laugh and a joke, so a good relationship with his dad, whereas Henry has a poor relationship. You can't contact him freely, has to be careful what he says. They have a strained relationship, and you do give a quote here which shows us that George is the favourite. For his dad to actually come out and say that does tell you something about them, doesn't it? Where you say Henry mocks his father and they do appear to have a good strong bond, and again you've given a quote backing up your point there. So if we look at the mark scheme now, so if we look at band 2, it says show some interpretation from one or both texts. So attempt some inferences from one or both texts. Well, you've done that. You've clearly read between the lines and given examples of how you think the relationships are. Where you said they have Henry and his father appear to have a strained relationship, and Eddie can have a laugh and a joke, and he's able to approach his dad. So that's what we mean by the inference. That's reading between the lines. So there's some good examples of that. The thing that lets it down a little bit, which does limit the grade, is the appropriate references and textual detail. I think you've only actually included 2 quotes. One for when he's talking about George, he's talking about George being the favourite, and you can't think of one, can you? You need to include quotes for each point that you make to gain the higher marks. And then the final bullet point says statements to show some differences between the texts. So I think the fact that you've only given 2 quotes limits it to this level 2, because if we look at the level 3 grade, so that's clear references and textual detail relevant to the focus of the question. Had you included some more quotes, then you would definitely have been in the band 3 as a minimum, because you've made clear inferences from both texts and your statements show clear differences between the texts. So you must make sure that you're including plenty of quotes when you come to do your actual exam. So I think unfortunately we're limited to 4 out of the possible 8 here, which half marks isn't bad for the first time of attempting this question. Moving on to question 3, where you're asked to analyse how Henry uses language to try to influence his father. I really like this question, or your answer to this question. I think you've done really well. Unlike the previous question, you've included lots of quotes to back up your points, and you've made several points, which is what's needed for a 12-mark question. So you said he appears desperate, he pleading for attention, and then we've got terminology here, repeatedly says my dear father, little quote here, and you've given your explanation there as to what he's trying to do. You could actually have said that he's trying to show how much he's missing his dad and how dear his dad is to him, or looking towards getting level 4 marks, you could have said something like it could be a deliberate choice, the language, by Henry, because the fact that they've not seen each other for 2 years to me would suggest that they're not actually that close, and so he's perhaps trying to think I'll get round him by making out that he's dear to me so I'll get my own way. Rather cynical, but then maybe. Then you've said that his brother are very unhappy. If you'd have just thrown in adjective in there, that would have been even better. But again, you say he's making sure he's getting the important fact across. And then this line 15 here, you said a bold statement. I did start writing hyperbole over the top of that, then realised that you have included that down there, so that's very good. So you've used subject terminology, bold statement, and then you've even said maybe a hyperbole. So that's excellent. And that point there, I really like that one. pulling on his father's heartstrings, yeah, so that so we can come home. And then again, we've got the quote here, like bears, more like bears than Christians. Again, if you just throw simile in there, that would have been even better. But again, giving the impression, like the wording there, that the boys are worked like animals and not treated in a human fashion at all. So yeah, I really, really like that. And I think if we look at the mark scheme, I think it's definitely a band 3. You've explained clearly the effect of the writer's choice of language, selected a range of relevant textual detail, and clear and accurate use of subject terminology. As I said, I think if you'd have used a couple more examples of the terminology, like the simile and the adjective, it could have tipped it up into the band 4, and also that little bit more in-depth analysis of the effect of the writer's language. But for me, it's definitely a 9 out of the 12 mark for this question, so well done. I'm very impressed. That gives you an overall score of 17 out of 24 for the 3 questions that you've attempted, and considering this is the first time we've done a mock for paper 2, that's a really good score. So keep up the good work. Just need to make sure that you're attending every lesson where possible, and where you can't attend, if you can try and catch up on the work before the following lesson, because quite often the work that we do in one lesson follows on to the next lesson, so you're not falling behind. And make sure that you're getting your homeworks done and handed in. However, you're on the right track and doing really well, so keep up the good work, Leanne. Well done.